what has happened with the communist experiment. We have to start with the definition of communism. In 1848, 140 years ago, a little book was published in Germany with the title The Communist Manifesto. Authors were Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. That little book changed the course of modern history. Its final result is that 40% of mankind is living today under communist governments. Now, here is how the Communist Manifesto defines communism. Communism means the abolition of private property. Please keep this in mind. The main issue in communism is getting rid of private property. The way they argue against private property is this. Private property generates greed. People want more and more property. In order to get more, they exploit other people. They commit injustices. And in the process, the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer. All the sufferings and the miseries in society stem from that one root, property. So, the communist theory says, if we get rid of private property and we introduce community property, there is no reason left for greed and for the drive towards injustice. In the new society, based on community property, we shall all work together, share together, care for each other, and we shall all have plenty. This was the theory. This was the dream. But they who conceived this theory did not know what was going to happen when one nationalized all private property. Please follow me very carefully here. As long as the society is based on private ownership of property, all the individuals are decision makers. The owners of property have to decide what they produce, when and how. They have to decide how to improve in order to compete with others. In the process, each one grows in stature and the whole society has plenty of products. In this situation, the government is not concerned if people go to work tomorrow or not. The government is not concerned with what people read or speak or believe. These are individual matters. Now, let us see again very carefully what happens when the whole property is nationalized. Ownership of property is such a fundamental issue that one changes it, a great number of other aspects of that society must necessarily change. Here are the things that automatically change. The moment the government has nationalized all property, the government has to undertake to run the whole economy. The government cannot allow the individuals to continue to make the decisions. The government has to take all the decisions up. That is done first by central planning. The government has to plan the whole economy. That is, how many cars should be produced, how much corn, how many clothes, how many napkins, how many toothpicks. And this plan has to be sent to the states, to cities, to little communities, and each one of them has to exactly execute the plan made for them by the government. The next step is that the government has to see that everybody goes to work tomorrow to fulfill the plan. The strange thing is that now nobody is really interested to work diligently and hard. So the government feels it to be absolutely necessary that they control the whole population. And how can the government see at each moment the whole population? Here is how. They introduce KGB, the secret police that builds a system of informers that infiltrate the whole society. In some countries, 1 in 3 persons is a secret police informer. The job of these informers is to tell the police how people work, how they fulfill the plan, how they obey the authorities. If you ask, why are the communists so evil that they watch everybody? The answer is, they are not evil. The system of communist property and of centralized economy demands that the government knows each moment that each individual fulfills his or her part of the total plan. Another thing necessarily happens. The government quickly becomes aware that people do not work if they do not own the property. And the government feels that they have to change the mentality of the whole population. The question the government asks is, how can we make the whole population obey us and fulfill the plan and produce? And here is how they figured out that they will achieve this goal. Here is how they think. We have to change the mentality of the whole population. We have to create a frame of mind that is conducive to total submission to our authority. We need people who totally obey us. We can achieve this only if people see that we are the only authority that exists and that they can enjoy life only if they obey us. So, let us convince them that there is no God up there and that life is only here and now. If life is only here, if the existence is only this bodily existence, then the purpose of living is simply satisfaction of one's needs and desires. And who can give the individual the possibility to obtain that satisfaction? It is only the Communist Party and its government. If one obeys, one gets privileges. If one disobeys, one goes to prison. And this is why each Communist Party feels that they have to spread atheism in their population. Atheism is perceived as the mental frame conducive to total dependence on the Communist Party. And that total dependence in turn is conducive to total obedience of the individual to the Communist Party. You see, the communist system of a centrally planned and government-run economy needs a population of totally obedient individuals, a population of robots. And atheism is meant to produce such robots. Now, a few other things happen in a totally centralized economy. Individual initiative and creativity and inventivity is completely destroyed. But in that situation of a government-run economy, the individual learns quickly how to maneuver, how to cheat, how to steal, how to work as little as possible and take home as much as possible. And why not? Once he is taught that there is no God and that this life is governed by the laws of adaptation and survival of the fittest, why not use all means to obtain the maximum from this life? The centralized system generates enormous corruption. In fact, the more an economy is centralized, the more it is prone to generate corruption.
This is the end of this side. Please go on to the next side of this cassette.
Let's take stock of what has happened once the property was nationalized. The decisions were taken from the individuals. A centrally planned economy was introduced. A police apparatus to watch each individual was created. Brainwashing through atheism and mind control was imposed. The central plan is always ill-conceived and badly executed. Enormous corruption becomes prevalent. Eventually, the whole economy is ruined. The production goes down and the whole society becomes poor. Shops are empty. food is rationed. This is the end product of the communist dream. It has promised a society of equality and brotherhood and plenty. It came to be a police state full of brutality and hate and economic disaster. Now, the nations do not commit suicide. Sooner or later, a society wakes up and changes course. It was in the 70s that the awakening took place. We saw at that time that the communist dream became a nightmare. But at that time, the ones who dared analyze the failure of communism were called dissidents and were sent to prison. But the imprisonment of the people who speak the truth does not stop the economic disaster. Sooner or later, somebody stands up in the leadership and stops the national disaster. This is exactly what is happening in one communist country after another. It started in China in 1978. You know, all the way through the 70s, there was shortage of food and almost starvation in China. Then, in 1978, the new Chinese leadership dismantled the communes and gave the land back to the farmers. And then the miracle happened. In just 4 years, by 1982, there was so much production that China started to look for foreign markets for their agricultural products. When they saw this miracle in agriculture, they gave the industry back to private enterprise and free market. In 1985, the leading communist newspaper of China stated that, quote, "It is not the business of the government to run the economy." Quotation ended. But this is total denial of a basic communist principle. The Chinese miracle is what made it inevitable that Soviet Union start on the same path of change. Perestroika means in effect the dismantling of the centrally planned and government-run economy. A few weeks ago, when Gorbachev announced that he was going to give all the land back to the farmers, he made the statement that, quote, "The farmers must feel that they are masters of their land. Only then they produce abundantly." But masters of their land means owners. And here we have the other total denial of the most basic communist principle, that of the abolition of private property. Now, again, I want you to follow me very, very carefully. I showed you that when the property was nationalized, a series of other things had to happen. They were initiative taken from the individual, a centrally planned economy, police control of the individuals, mind manipulation of the whole society. Now, when the land is given back to the farmers, when the state gives up on centrally planned and government-run economy, all the other things have to be cancelled too. Everything has to be reversed. Here is why and how. The moment the land and other enterprises are restored to the individuals, the initiative has to be restored to these individuals. Those individuals must have freedom of information, freedom of creativity, freedom of action. And because the individuals need these freedoms in order to produce the goods the society needs, the state must give up the mind control and the police watching of all the individuals. These things are not necessary anymore. They become a hindrance. Now, that is exactly what is happening in Soviet Union, in Poland, in Hungary, and this is going to happen in all the other communist countries sooner or later. What interests us is to understand how all these reversals reflect in the sphere of religion. It is not only that mind control through atheism is no more a necessary action. Now the communist governments start to understand that atheism has completely destroyed the basis of morals. The question now, when freedoms are given back to the individuals, is what makes a society moral? With the area of freedoms enlarged more and more, what can help the society to gain back its morality? Do you remember? I said that in March this year, a Marxist scholar in Moscow wrote that the church was needed in order to improve morals and to organize charity. Here are some other facts about this perception. When Dr. Billy Graham visited Peking in March this year, the Prime Minister of China told him that the leadership of China feels that the Christians can help the Chinese people in the area of improving morals. Another fact, the present communist leader of Hungary, Mikhail Gross, had a meeting with an American missionary leader and told him that the 2 million Hungarian youth have lost their direction, and he sees that the Marxists have no message that could help them. Only the evangelical Christians have such a message. Consequently, the evangelical Christians are welcome to start working with the Hungarian youth, even to the extent that they could buy land to build Christian camps in Hungary. These are extraordinary developments. What could be more encouraging and more inspiring than to see these signals from the communist leaders that their nations need Christianity? Let me summarize the way I see the present situation in the communist world. The communist experiment has turned into disaster. Economic, social, spiritual disaster. There is no communist country of economic success. The total failure of the communist system is evident from the outside, but it is painfully felt by all who are inside it. The nations that made this communist experiment have woken up. They came to the moment of truth. We may say that we are at the end of the communist experiment. The big question is, where do these nations go from here? They all have the awareness of the failure of communism. They all hate the Marxist ideology that produced the communist nightmare. At this point, I have to make a very important clarification. It should not be understood from what I have said that all is well in these communist countries. The changes are at their beginning stage only. Many of these changes are not yet encased in the law, although a new penal code and a new law of religion has been promised. The whole process of change is still hated by many party officials who stand to lose their privileges with the change. So, Gorbachev could be removed from office overnight, and we may find a new Stalin in Kremlin tomorrow. This is why I believe America should stay strong, and from that position of strength insist on more changes in human rights area in all the communist countries. And we should watch and pray that the present awareness of some of the communist leaders that Christianity is to be restored in their countries should be accepted by all and be implemented. With this awareness and with this warning in mind, we may proceed. What we see in the communist world is that failure of the communist dream has produced a great spiritual vacuum. For while they know that the Marxist ideology was wrong, and while some leading intellectuals may have a vague awareness that Christianity should be the way out, the society as a whole has very, very little knowledge of what Christianity really is. So in this spiritual vacuum, whoever has something to offer is welcome. And who is already making the offer? In China, the Mormons are very active and welcome. In Soviet Union, there is the attraction of the drug culture, of the rock music, of the New Age movement. What are we, the Bible believers, doing? What we have in Soviet Union is a huge open door of opportunity, but very, very little evangelical action. The biggest problem is that the Russian evangelicals have never been allowed to go beyond the 10th grade in education. They never had a seminary. Now when the door of activities is open, there are no trained preachers, teachers, leaders, writers. It is in this area of training quickly the young believers that we should concentrate our ministries. It was about 10 years ago, while I was still in Romania, that I saw that this change in the communist world was coming. I am on record with this statement that the next great event that is going to surprise the West is a radical change in the communist world and an opening of the communist world to the gospel. But, I added then, the danger is that when the change comes, we shall not be ready. And that is why I came to the United States to produce the books for training a new generation of preachers in Romania. What a joy it is for me to be able to tell you that we have printed already about 35 books, and we have about 20 others in the making. And we have 1,200 young preachers in Romania to whom these books are being smuggled and who are becoming very able preachers because they have now the proper training they needed. Now, it is very painful to me to see that Romania is the only country in Eastern Europe that resists the change. The Romanian communist regime is stubborn in keeping the country totally centralized and in total economic ruin. But we believe that the change is inevitable and it will come to Romania too. We are working for that day so that when freedom comes, we can flood the country with Christian literature. But with the openness in Soviet Union, a new door of opportunity and a new challenge came to our mission. This is the 3 million Romanians that live in the Soviet Union. In 1940, Stalin took from Romania her eastern region and transformed it in the Soviet Republic of Moldavia. There are 3 million Romanians who live there as Soviet citizens. There are many good and powerful evangelical churches there, but their pastors and their lay preachers never got any training. Now we can offer them that training. For here is the irony. To the 22 million Romanians, we still have to smuggle our books. But to the 3 millions who live in the Soviet Union, we can send them the books by mail. So here is our plan. We just got the list of all the evangelical churches in Soviet Moldavia and the name and address of their pastors. We start now to send to them the first parcels with 3 books. In a few weeks' time, 2 of our men will travel to Soviet Moldavia to visit some of those Romanian pastors and to bring more addresses, especially of young, gifted lay preachers who want to study. We shall send to them then our courses and textbooks and workbooks. We intend then to send regularly teams of teachers who will sit down with these students and help them through the courses. Well, all this new operation comes to us at a moment when we are still not out of our financial crisis. Here is what we need. The initial trip of our 2 men to explore and organize our ministry in Soviet Moldavia costs $5,000. Each parcel of 3 books to be sent to those preachers costs $35. A book costs on average $10 and the mail is $5. Let us say that we find just 100 gifted young preachers who want to study using our books. To send to each one of them 1 parcel will cost us $3,500. We can send them a parcel per month. In a year, that will be 36 books to each, and the total cost would be $42,000. But we hope to find many more than 100 preachers who need our books. Please have in mind that these preachers hardly have a Bible. They have no commentary, no Bible dictionary, no devotional books, no theological literature, nothing. Can you imagine your pastor with no library? Can you imagine yourself with no Christian books at all? Let me add one point about these Romanians in Soviet Union. They all had to study Russian as official language of the state. If we train them with our Romanian books, they can be missionaries to the rest of the Soviet Empire because they can travel in the country and they speak Russian language too. What a strategic group they may be. So this is where we are. The door is open to work in Soviet Union. This door may still open wider or may close overnight. The question is, what do we do now while it is open? Please get enthusiastic with us about the new possibilities of missions in the communist countries. They are available and open to the gospel. Through the failure of communism, God has been preparing them for this day. Can we see God at work there? And can we hear this call to be His agents and messengers? This is Christmas season. For many in America, this is the greatest shopping time. Over full shops, season decorations, beautiful music. Well, in countries like Romania and Soviet Union, there is no shopping time because the shops are empty. There is no difference between this time and the other months of the year. Christmas is officially completely ignored. No free day for Christmas. So, when you are in the Christmas mood and happy, will you remember your brothers and sisters in Romania and in Soviet Union? Will you pray for them? Will you send them a gift to share with them some of the blessings the Lord gave you? We wish you a very, very blessed Christmas and a very happy New Year. Thank you for being such a good friend and supporter of our mission. May the Lord continue to bless you and your dear ones. We love you. God bless you.